Alright, the Lakers made a new addition, or rather I guess a re-addition to their team, signing center Kylor Kelley to an Exhibit-10 contract. That's simply being a training camp contract and therefore retains his rights throughout training camp and then for their G League team thereafter, which is likely the main point of doing this, but then again they do have a two-way contract open, so he could compete for it, and he is two-way contract eligible. And well, they have now officially filled out their training camp roster, which if you're not aware is allowed to carry 21 players on it. Now that obviously has to be trimmed down to 15 by the end of training camp, but until that point they can carry up to 21 players, and that's how many they currently have on it, including other training camp guys like Augustus Marciulionis, RJ Davis, Arthur Kluma, and Eric Dixon, all four of which are also signed to an Exhibit-10 contract and likely will be playing with the G League team, or potentially get that vacant two-way contract and join both Christian Koloko and Chris Manning on a two-way contract and two-way deal with the Lakers. Though before I get too far ahead of myself with that one and talk about two-way contracts and the best option for their vacant two-way contract, and don't worry, we'll talk more about that in the future, let's simply talk about Kylor Kelley here. And if you don't remember him, he was part of their training camp team last season, did spend the entirety of it with their team, and that led to him eventually spending time with their G League team, nearly spending the entirety of last season with the South Bay Lakers, though he actually was called up and had two different NBA stints, playing with both the New Orleans Pelicans and the Dallas Mavericks, accounting for 11 total NBA games in which he did get some playing time in. Definitely not very much, only about 11 minutes per game, but was fairly productive in that time frame, averaging roughly 3 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, about a half a block per game, shooting 63.6% from the field, and then about 60% from the free throw line. Again, not very much, but it was his first official NBA stint, so good on him, and hopefully he can carry that into another NBA stint this season, maybe even with the Lakers. Like I said, he is two-way contract eligible. You know, he's not as young compared to their other two-way contracts. Compared to Koloko being 25, he's actually even older than that. He's about to turn 28 later tonight. Officially his birthday tomorrow, so this kind of a birthday present for him. Happy birthday to Kylor Kelley. This definitely being a great early birthday present for him. I mean, after all, any player that's given an Exhibit-10 contract is guaranteed, I think, at least $75K if they stick around and play with the team's G League team if they are not signed to a two-way contract. So again, definitely a good little present there for Kylor Kelley. And well, talking about him and the time he spent with their G League team last season, he was a productive player for them and did start in a majority of the G League games with them. In the 18 regular season G League games that he did play, which is not including the tip-off tournament games in which there are 14 more of those, Kylor Kelley averaged roughly 11 points per game, playing 24 minutes per game, grabbing about 7 rebounds per game, blocking 2 shots per game, and that's very impressive in 24 minutes per game. That translating to nearly 3 of them per 36 minutes, is a very good rim protector, probably one of the best at the entire G League level, and is a very good athlete to come with it, meaning that he's not only a good rim protector, but also a great lob threat offensively, a good pick and roll partner, is even fairly switchable on defense, so is a pretty good athlete for a center. And yes, he is more of a traditional center rather than a modern center, isn't a floor spacing big option, isn't a guy that will step out to the three-point line and knock down some shots. That's not Kylor Kelley's game. He's more of an inside around the basket kind of big, either a dump off guy or again a lob threat around the rim. Not much of a shooting option. You know, he actually has a decent floater game, so not completely reliant on dump offs and simply dunking it out the rim, but he is definitely more around the rim oriented compared to being a three-point shooting option or simply a floor spacing big. And you know, if I had to guess, that's probably why they brought him back, not only for that skill set, but directly to play with their G League team again. Even with him now being 28, he was a central part of the South Bay Lakers last season, was their starting center for a majority of the time, and they would like to have that back to their team. You know, he had some good chemistry with guys on the Lakers' current team, somebody like Bronny James for example. They had a really good two-man game and a really good pick and roll game that we can directly point to. Here in the highlights in the background you can see it with them. Bronny dishing it out to Kylor Kelley in the post, finding him in the open court for some monstrous dunks they threw down and showing off his athletic ability. That's probably the main point of signing him to this. Yes, definitely more training camp competition, not simply an undrafted rookie that might not know entirely what he's doing and not ready to bring the physicality of the NBA. That's something that Kylor Kelley can do for their team and for their training camp roster. But if I had to guess, it's more so for their G League team and to retain his rights for their G League team thereafter. I mean, we often talk about team continuity with the big league team, that being the Los Angeles Lakers, but it's the real thing for their G League team too. That's why in the past we've seen guys like Shaq Harrison be brought back in multiple years in a row for their G League team. Even back in the day why they retained Gary Payton II, if only they would have actually signed him to a real contract. But that's what they like to do and why they have likely done it again here with Kylor Kelley. Retaining him and bringing him back for his second season. Even better knowing that he actually had an NBA stint and actually played decently well in it. You know, only talking about 2 different 10-day contracts, both with the Pelicans and the Mavericks, but getting a guy back in your G League team that actually has an NBA background, still remains 2-way contract eligible, is definitely a good thing for their team, and all around I think it's a good move to bring Kylor Kelley back, both for their G League team and for their training camp roster. And well, then going back to that vacant 2-way contract of theirs and talking about if Kylor Kelley could be an option for it. Yes, I would call him an option for it. Again, he is 2-way contract eligible, despite turning 28 later tonight. You know, it would be an older 2-way contract, if not the oldest in the entire NBA, but he could be an option for it, albeit not the favorite for it in my opinion. Like I said, they do have 4 different guys on Exhibit-10 contracts, including Eric Dixon, who nearly was on a 2-way contract for their team. If I had to guess, and definitely of their current Exhibit-10 contracts, he would be the favorite for that 2-way contract. Then also having a guy like Arthur Kluma, my personal favorite for that 2-way contract. Simply talking about their current 15-man roster and the needs they have left to fill, I'd point to a 3-and-D wing, and a big guy like Arthur Kluma could potentially be that for them. So I'd put him either number 1 or number 2 for that 2-way contract. Then a guy like RJ Davis had a very storied and decorated college career, so can't rule him out. Even a guy like Augustas Marciulionis, a 4-year college player out of St. Mary's, is a very good point guard and is one of the few true point guards coming out of college. You know, unfortunately didn't play with their summer league team due to an injury, but I would actually call him kind of a dark horse for that 2-way contract. They don't have a point guard under a 2-way contract, so he might have an outside shot at it. And if I had to guess, I'd probably put both Kylor Kelley and RJ Davis for the kind of last in that line for the 2-way contract spot. Again, if either one of them would show out, that could and definitely would change my opinion, but I definitely put him behind guys like Eric Dixon, Arthur Kluma, and probably even Marciulionis. I mean, if this were last season, he'd definitely have a better chance at it. I literally even talked about it last year. If you've been keeping up with the channel for that long, then you actually might remember it. You know, talking about with Anthony Davis being their starting center option, Hayes being their backup, and not a whole lot of competition behind them after that point. Having Christian Koloko, but he was directly coming off an entirety of a missed season at that point, coming back from a blood clot and working his way back. I thought Kylor Kelley might be a decent option for it. He even again got an NBA stint and did fill a few 10-day contracts, so that's something to point to with him. He played decently well in that time frame, so again, I wouldn't rule him out for it, but he definitely had a much better chance last season compared to this season to get a 2-way contract or simply find a roster spot and therefore a pathway to playing time with their big league team. I'm not sure that's the most likely option for Kylor Kelley. Again, I love the fact they brought him back for their South Bay Lakers team and maybe for a potential option for their big league team. I mean, if a bunch of things to go wrong for them, Ayton either getting hurt or not playing well, or maybe even both, Hayes not playing well, getting hurt, maybe something like that with both of them, Christian Koloko not being able to fill a backup center role, that's kind of what it would have to take for Kylor Kelley to get a 2-way contract, or eventually down the line maybe a 10-day contract. Overall here though, I think that covers it with Kylor Kelley. Yes, they did sign him to a contract. No, it's not to a 15-man roster spot. No, it's not to a 2-way contract, but it is an Exhibit-10 contract, and therefore he will be with their training camp team, will be with their team throughout preseason, and therefore it's an opportunity to make a good impression on them, potentially getting a 2-way contract or simply sticking around longer with their team. And well, with all of that being said, what do you guys think? How do you feel about Kylor Kelley and his potential outlook with the Lakers? Do you think he should or will be an option for a 2-way contract? Or is this simply to retain him for their G League team? Let me know your thoughts and how you feel about Kylor Kelley in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night